We have Jack Stauss and Patrick Nilsson today presenting on why a wild Wasatch protects our watershed. So I'll give the time over to you guys.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Jack Stauss, and I'm the executive director of Save Our Canyons. I started in this role in July, so pretty new to it, but I've been working on conservation issues for the last decade or so, including volunteering, hanging out, and collaborating with Save Our Canyons. I'm really excited to be here with Patrick Nelson from Solid Public Utilities. Appreciate your support, and we work with them on a lot of projects. So I think it's a good synergy for this. This might be kind of a refresher for some of you. I think there's a bit of history that you might all know and kind of some high level information, but I think it's really important to reiterate some of these things and to understand where we came from, how we get to issues, and where we could potentially be going. So hopefully you find it interesting. Save Our Canyons, my organization, was founded in 1972, really as a pushback to industrial development in the Wasatch Canyons. So we work on protecting the beauty and wildness of the whole canyons, but focused in the Tri-Canyon area most of the time. And a big part of that work, either directly or by association, is helping to protect the watersheds that we all rely on. I'll let you give your intro at the end there, but
Okay, right now?
or no, we can do it when you.
Okay, I'll do it
start,
in the slides.
Okay. We haven't practiced this together. This is our trial run here. So yeah, kind of the overlay of the watershed itself. And once again, you're probably all familiar with this, but this is what we get as far as the landscape where our water comes from for Salt Lake City. And of course, we have these signs all over the place reminding us of that, but I think it's easy for people to forget when we kind of get in our bubbles and are doing our recreation or enjoying the forests. These landscapes are where our first line defense is for protecting a healthy watershed for all of us downstream. And so how does the forest actually help with our conservation and protection of the water itself? And as once again, many of you probably know, the forest itself is the first safeguard against some of these bad runoff events, lots of heavy metals or pollutants that end up in our stream. So having forest canopy, litter, and lots of robust forest health is our first line of defense. So in the Wasatch, we are fortunate to have that. And I think some of these stats to me are just really good reminders that we need to protect this landscape. I think, let's see here. Yeah, I think this one really kind of drives the point home here, how much the trees actually intercept the rainfall itself and how much that equates to our drinking water. So why do we need to protect the watershed now? And I think it's important to look back at our history. Around the time of settlement, we were able to utilize the natural resources to grow Salt Lake Valley, and the first pioneers that lived here utilized all the resources to a level that was unsustainable. So we had timbering and mining, and then, of course, ranching. And over the course of time, all of these processes really degraded the watershed to a point where it was unsustainable. And I think, we see remnants of this still today. We see the history of this kind of etched in the side of the mountains. And in order to know why we have the rules in place now, I think it's really a good reminder to look back at the history of some of these landscapes that were degraded to the point where we had to have people step in and help us understand how to manage it. So I love this piece of history. I think it's a really cool through line for environmental conservation and environmental protection to here in the Wasatch. Gifford Pinchot came and visited Salt Lake City in 1906, and what he told us was really the kind of backbone of his whole conservation ethos. He's like, you guys have something really amazing here, but if you don't protect it, you won't be able to provide for the future growth of this landscape. So we had to do a lot of backpedaling and get to a place where we were in more sync with the natural landscape. This picture is from the early 1900s. This is Spruce, what we now know as the Spruce's Campground or the Mill D Trailhead, Days Fork Trailhead. They planted millions of trees here, which ended up all over the Wasatch. And even just there in that small campground today, there's a huge variety of trees. And I think it's a good reminder that the places that we still recreate and love are the backbone of a healthy Wasatch and the vision that people had back in the turn of the century. Through much of the first half of the 20th century, this was sort of the ebb and flow of conservation. We had a relatively good, steady regrowth of the forests and synergy between the mountains, watershed, and those that relied on it. Around 1970s, when my organization started, we sort of see the birth of the kind of recreation economy, industrial recreation economy. And that, I think, is kind of when we slip back towards out of sync balance. And I think we were able to support a really robust economy, but we also have the day-to-day need to remember that when we do fall out of sync, we have overdevelopment, which can contaminate, degrade, and essentially go back to our conservation-minded ethos. So these are a lot of the threats we see today. I'm sure a lot of you have been familiar with these. I think day to day, like we kind of have in my field of work, kind of play whack-a-mole or the death by 1,000 cuts, putting out small fights, big fights, advising what we can. We have an amazing amount of community support, as well as partnerships with people from across the spectrum of public utilities, cities, counties, other environmental groups that help us kind of push back on unregulated development. So I think just for another example of how some of these developments can negatively impact our watershed, today's developments, something like a parking lot, drains stormwater as fast as 34 acres of forest, which is another crazy statistic, just thinking about how much more efficient a forest is than built development on protecting watershed. And those are fights that we have, a lot. And through good partnerships and collaboration, we're able to find strategies to kind of avoid some of the worst impacts. I think, of course, one of the main places that is this going to be? Yes, I'll try to tee that up. But one of the main other spots I'd like to kind of highlight here is forest fire mitigation. Of course, through much of the 20th century, suppression was kind of the name of the game. We now know that kind of like a managed forest is a little bit healthier. So doing partnerships with Forest Service to work on fuel treatment projects really can help be a more robust solution for our watershed as well. So those are a couple of one of the main partnerships that I really appreciate in the Canyon and I'm learning about here in my new role. So I'll pass it over to Patrick.
Okay.
There you go.
Good morning. Who drinks water here? Come on, no, raise your hands. It's just like, let's go. All right, my name is Patrick Nelson. I work for the Salt Lake City Department of Public Utilities. We are a drinking water utility, and on a daily basis, we serve 385,000 people drinking water. Salt Lake City Public Utilities also does stormwater, wastewater, and they also have another utility of streetlights. So before I get going into my spiel here, you guys are here to embarrass me. Why don't we have the public utilities people stand up for a second? Because everybody works to protect your drinking water here. I don't see everybody standing up. Okay. These folks all work every day to make sure when you turn your tap on, the water is clean. And when you flush your toilet, in our service area, of course, this is the blue one. I'll get to this in a second, that it's good to go. Measuring water, looking at stormwater runoff. I'm sure I'm missing something. Making sure your pipes, lead and copper, are healthy. So when you're drinking that water, your pipes aren't making you sick. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes there. And Jack just gave a great cue up as to the history of the watershed, why we exist. When he was saying watershed, what he meant in my book, because I know there's all sorts of different watershed references out there, but in our little bubble, when we say watershed, we mean drinking water source. So we're talking about the source of the drinking water that goes into the pipes in these blue areas. The 385,000 people, you all can read the different cities in here, but we serve all these folks daily. A lot of it is gravity fed. There's not a lot of pumping that goes on. We do have pump stations. There's some neighborhoods that need to be pumped up too, but it's kind of cool. Lower carbon footprint. A lot of the water is served strictly by gravity. And I am not a distribution person. I more work up in the canyons. We do a lot with restrooms. and invasive weeds and that type of stuff. So I have to give you my expertise. It's not the drinking water and the sampling side of it. But most of it can be gravity fed. Metro treatment plant is somewhere at the mouth of Little Cottonwood Canyon by Lakai. Big Cottonwood at the mouth. We have one of Parley's up here. If when you drive up the canyon, you see those two reservoirs, Mountain Dell, that's ours. And then of course, all the way up in City Creek. Back in when the first European settlers arrived, one of the first things they do was divert water and start going on water. So I do want to talk about the watershed health is public health. If it's drinking water, what happens up in your public lands that Shane and Connor from the Uinta Wasatch Cache, I'm just going to try to get everybody embarrassed here today, that they help us protect. And that was the reason why the forest was created in 1905, as Jack alluded to, is to protect your drinking water supply. But watershed health is public health. So we need a clean ecosystem as part of the first treatment, as part of the EPA's multiple barriers approach. A clean, a healthy ecosystem is what we rely on. And in the past, as Jack talked about, the areas were logged, they were mined, they came in, they planted trees. The CCC had camps at the mouth of Big Cottonwood, they had a camp at Spruces. They did a lot to get things going again. And with our friends from the Forest Service and the health department, we've been able to get really good drinking water quality. So at our treatment plants, they all test really well. The past challenges were, again, mining, grazing, and logging. They help build the economy. I'm not saying anything negative about it, but when they realize they're getting their water from here, they try to fix it. So that's why the forest was created. And just cycling back, these are the new challenges that we're working on. This picture on the left on both sides was a monsoonal outburst event in 2019. Does everybody remember that when Little Cottonwood was closed for like 2 days? And it just nuked. And I don't have, I thought I was going to be, anyway, it just nuked. And Lisa Falls, that drainage, does everybody hike that drainage? Literally jumped its drainage and this huge rock slide. That's on the highway. And if you're a mountain biker or a hiker and you've rode the Little Cottonwood Trail, I don't know if you went in there after the carnage came through, but the guy that has the hydro plant had to get his big equipment out to just smooth it through. After that, they could not get the debris in the water, the sediment in the water to settle down for like 2 weeks. As much chemical as they threw out, they couldn't. They mixed it with water from Deer Creek, the Deer Creek Reservoir, and they couldn't get it to settle down. We've had a lot of these. Luckily, not lately. I don't know if you remember, a couple years after that, Big Cottonwood had those big monsoonal outbursts. They had to close that canyon for a couple of days. As steep as it is in those lower canyons, which in those geographical zones just happened to be above our intakes, they were getting these crazy weather events. It just got caught there and blew it out. And the other thing that we're kind of not struggling with, but we're working on, as Jack also said, is doing fuels reduction. So with this, I'm gonna jump back for a second. This is a challenge that we're still trying to figure out how to go on. Climate change is influencing the weather patterns there. The middle slide was the Parley's fire in 21. Anybody here that works in the watershed division with me has seen multiple grass fires come off. But if you talk to the old time fire wardens, the folks that have done fire for a long time, what you keep hearing from them is that the fire behavior they're seeing now, and I'm sure you've seen this in the news, is really different. This fire took off. It was a car that it wasn't chains dragging like we had in 1920, I can't remember the year, 20, that started below our treatment plant. This was a carburetor exploding, and that fire just ripped. And the only reason it didn't carry into Mill Creek Canyon, I got a call from the district ranger letting us know what was going on. The only reason that she just said it's moving really fast. We anticipate it moving into Mill Creek, and Mill Creek on the fire modeling goes pretty hot. You guys correct me of the Forest Service if I'm saying anything wrong, please. But with the hotter temperatures, the drier summers that we're having, things are really behaving differently. So after this, I don't know if you've seen the Jenga pieces, but we worked really closely with the state of Utah and the Forest Service and the county, and I'm probably missing some partners to do a lot of fuels mitigation along that to try to slow things down. So we're doing a lot of fuels mitigation now to try to solve those issues. But fires are a huge threat because we can't treat this water. After that fire, there was a debris flow that luckily was just stopped by I-80 that came out. If that gets into our treatment plants, we have relatively simple plants, and that's a good thing because that means you don't have as much chemicals in your water. There's less chemical byproducts if you're in our service area, obviously. But we can't treat the water. If we get a huge monsoonal outburst, we have to wait. We can't treat the water. If there's fire debris in areas like in Big Cottonwood, if we got a fire right above the plant, there's a good chance it would knock Big Cottonwood offline for a number of years, usually 3 to 5 until things recover. And the other challenge that we're faced with now is just the explosion of use. Everybody loves, I hope you do, the Cottonwood Canyons. Big and Little Cottonwood Canyon, Parley's Canyon. Outdoor recreation is just awesome in these places. But with that, we get a lot of other impacts, the death by 1,000 cuts that kind of hit us that are coming in. So anytime a car goes off the highway and there's ski traffic, we're under a lot of pressure to let that sit. So what we end up doing is letting the water bypass the plant. We've got a great relationship with UDOT and Unified Police and the ski resorts, where sometimes if it needs to come out, we tell people we're sorry, this is gonna have to just come out and you're gonna have to wait. But it's just like a very delicate balance that we've worked with all these different folks to get the water, keep your water protected. And it sounds gratuitous, but honestly, we cannot do it without you and without your support for some of these policies that help protect water quality. And then also the number of partners that we work with. The city often operates outside of its incorporated boundaries, so we don't have direct jurisdiction. So we work with I miss somebody here. If you're not on here and you work with me, I'm sorry. But the number of different entities and people that we rely on and we partner with is how we get it done. And at the treatment plants, our water quality, like I said earlier, is still good. So we have like an onion of layers of protection. We've got the health department, we've got the state, we've got the Forest Service. You can read this list. I'm not even making it up. Like the public that goes up, we have a team of Watershed Rangers that has to go around, and people miss the sign, they bring their dog, and we're up in the canyons and there's no dogs. Same with swimming. You know, your kids, it's like 100-degree, 110-degree day. We're the wet blanket committee. Hey, you got to get out of the water. Yeah, go. I don't care where you go. You just can't be here. So, but we really rely on the partnerships to get everything done out there. And I think it's back to you right now.
Yeah, kind of conclusion. Basically, to just kind of wrap up really what Patrick was just saying, I think there's a lot of tools that we have to continue the work that's already been done and that you are all doing. And that is why we're all here, to keep a healthy watershed and keep understanding what we can do to protect it. So yeah, I think there's, especially like going off the collaboration, I think a lot of these tools that we have are completely reliant on that, and sitting in meetings with those from across the table, across the aisle, whatever it takes to make sure we're all communicating and working towards a healthier future for our environment is really key. And yeah, I think that just about wraps it up. Let's see. I'm sure I'm missing a lot on here too. So I'll be psyched during the Q&A for y'all to educate me on other tools that we have to continue working towards a holistic and healthy future for the Wasatch, the watershed that we all rely on.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Questions, comments?
Thank you for your presentation. Very interesting. A question I have, can you expand on how vehicles on the road cause problems at the treatment plant? Besides one being off the road, are there other aspects for cars causing you problem?
That's a great question. Thank you for the clarification. When a car goes off the creek, we usually try to send somebody up to look at it, and they'll drive up, even if it's nuking snow, to get a look at it. But our biggest information that we need is the car in the water? Has anything ruptured? And you can imagine, it's a little different than Little Cottonwood Canyon, where you have a SLCo truck, that has food or maybe just some gas that's like not close, versus like a huge semi full of who knows what. As our hydrologist says, methyl ethyl death, just right above the plant. So it really just depends on what the concern is. If the car ends up in the creek and we cannot determine what is coming out of it, usually they're going to bypass the plant. I don't work at the plants, but we just give them the information and let them make the call. And if it's ruptured and we don't know how much, depends on what it is, that would be the threat. So the roadway's biggest threat is the stuff coming off of it, typically a vehicle. And most of the time we dodge the bullet, but there's been a few times where we've really dodged the bullet, and we're grateful for that. So.
And on cars, a little more generally too, just the amount of cars that drive up the canyon every day, especially in the winter. I think just the pollutants that come off of vehicles is another concern, and kind of goes back to that parking lot piece that I had about just, the more cars we put up the canyon, the more we're exposing the watershed to a variety of pollutants. And that's kind of more like individual versus the cars going in the ditch. But I think, better public transportation could be a good solution to some of those problems.
I had a question about what the impacts of animals up in the canyon, not necessarily pets, but wild animals, how they impact the watershed or our quality of drinking water, if you know anything about that.
Does a moose poop in the woods?
Yeah. Hopefully we don't talk about dogs all day. But we don't see a lot of so the two indicators, and I'm going to rely on somebody here that's more water quality oriented. Our biggest one is E. coli. And so the raw water at the plant does not have E. coli readings that are off the charts. And so we've always taken, as it's been explained to me, you can control dogs, you can ask people not to bring their dogs, right? But the wildlife is part of what makes it charming. So it doesn't have an impact on the water. Dogs can, especially unmitigated. I mean, we've all have dogs. They love the water. They go in them. You don't know where they're going to the bat. They just go. So when you get out of the car and the dog just gets stoked and starts going around. Dogs hate to be on leashes. Sorry, I'm talking about my old dog here. She was a handful.
So you were just paying the fines in the watershed
then? Yeah, no. Yeah. Draper at Corner Canyon used to have, that's Water Pro, and as I understand it, there was being to be too high of an E. coli load to get enough treatment time with the chlorine to actually treat it, and the state was telling them you're not going to be able to use this water for your source. And so that's what we want to avoid here in the Cottonwoods, in Parleys and City Creek.
That's another point, I guess a little soundbite that I remember from interviewing Jeff Niermeyer years ago, who many of you probably worked with. He told me when I first was getting interested in this, that we can't treat our way out of these problems. So some of these things we think the water will get degraded and we can just run it through the plant. And we need forests, we need healthy ecosystems up top to help mitigate these chemicals and pollutants. So we can't just treat our way out.
I just wanted to expand a little bit on the dog thing. So if an animal has lived up in the canyon, that the forest can filter out any of what they're eating. But if you bring an animal up that's domesticated, they're eating different things, you're bringing it up, that's what the forest cannot filter out. And that's what we've kind of learned. So that's why domesticated animals aren't allowed up there. But if the animals live up there naturally, it's part of the ecosystem and it's filtered.
Okay, my question has to do with invasive plants in the watershed. Do they affect the water quality, or are they just something that is, we can ignore? And if they do, how much is Salt Lake City Public Utilities doing to mitigate the invasive plants?
Aren't you the lead on the committee on immigration?
Well,
so
I
thank
was
you.
at one point.
I love that question. I love it.
I know what I'm doing. I wonder what you guys are doing.
Send me the softball. So I hate invasive plants, and we have the folks I had stand up from the Watershed Division especially, and then Sage Fitch from Salt Lake County. I'm missing somebody here. As a water utility, we don't like the invasive plants. They change the landscape, they increase fire danger, and we are on their tail. If anybody wants to come do a weed pull with us, we need volunteers. And love some more visibility for invasive weeds. They undermine the ecological integrity of the ecosystem. I kind of liken the downside of invasive species to having a stock portfolio. This is going to date me, but you all remember Enron? It was going up and up and up and up until it wasn't. And so we like to have a diverse stock portfolio, a diverse ecosystem, and good bunch grass and good natives. A lot of those things are getting harder to restore after they've been disturbed. We have some long history of environmental disturbances. So invasive species are great because they're so durable and opportunistic, but they're not good for us in our long-term watershed health. And then if you like to take pictures of wildflowers, they kill off species diversity. If you mountain bike, you're going to be riding through fields of thorny star thistle or whatever thistles along the way. So we actually do a lot of work. We get funding from the state, Utah Department of Ag, thank you for that. We also get funding through the Utah Watershed Restoration Initiative, thank you for that, for the folks that work at the state to mitigate those. So we have a lot of folks that go out and put packs of herbicide on and go spray in Lower City Creek. We have a lot of weed pulling and stuff like that, so yes.
Ditto. It's a
Thank
big
you.
part of our stewardship.
On the trails, there's a higher level of heavy metals on our trails, pedestrian trails in the watershed. And also, I go to the ski shop and I see these eco-friendly waxes. Are you tracking these pollutants that we can't see? Are they a concern? Like is ski wax a significant pollutant? Is the little metal coming off the trekking poles a significant pollutant? Because just kind of curious. And thank you for your service.
Gee, thanks, Mo. Are you talking about? So metals at the plant, this is out of my wheelhouse. So I'm going to say my best answer is I'm not an expert on it. So Sam County, somebody here, the city does not do regular sampling for metals. I think they do like once a year for metals of raw water at the plant. So everything you described there, we're not seeing at the plant. It's not from the old legacy mines. We're not seeing it the raw water intakes at the plant. That's not part of the sampling regime, the PFAS. It's part of, this is way outside, so I'm just going to say, my understanding is I think the UCMR 5 sampling protocols, thank you, Matthew, I got that right. They do look at that occasionally, but I don't know what the results of those are. We could probably do research if someone wanted to know and figure it out. But you were supposed to get Teresa Gray, the water quality administrator, and she would have known, but I don't. So.
Hi. So recreating on a watershed is definitely unique. And I know that the recreation looks different between the different canyons. Have you noticed a difference in water quality within the canyons based off of, the different types of recreation?
I think the rules kind of apply equally throughout that's a great question. So the question was, does water quality different with the different levels of recreation use? I don't think we've seen that. It usually, unless I'm looking around for some yeses and nos on the water, but the water at the treatment plants is good. Now, when you look at Parley's with the history of having, it's got a freeway in it, and it's been the stream has been destabilized by, there was a historic Union Pacific rail line that went from Salt Lake City to, that's been more impacted, a lot more grazing there, and it didn't bounce back as quickly. And I don't think that canyon goes as good, but still, again, at the plant, the water quality is really good.
City Creek Canyon has, for those of you who know it, it doesn't have any, you can recreate above the plant, but you have to work to get there. And the water coming out into our treatment plant there, the treatment plant guys, sometimes they can't even treat for like turbidity and other things because they do treat for it, they look for it, but they don't have to do anything to it. It's almost pristine coming out. So versus Big and Little Cottonwood.
Can you talk a little bit about the artesian wells in Liberty Park and on 5th East? Does the city have any role in monitoring the quality of those? And I used to drink that on a regular basis, and I wonder if I was poisoning myself.
I know that the city does some sampling there, but I can't speak to it. That is just not in my, just to be honest, I don't know the answer to that. Good question.
The city does test them regularly and
Got Margaret.
like a lot. It tests them all the time to make sure that water is always clean and safe, drinkable water. So you can always trust that the city you can trust that the city always keeps regular tabs and it monitors them very, very closely. And if anything's amiss, it immediately goes to solve those issues. They're very high priority.
Okay, last one.
And then we'll stick around for a little bit, or I will. I don't know about Patrick, but.
My condo association pays a company to do snow removal, and they use different types of ice melt. And I wonder what the implications are for the different types of ice melt. And it occurs to me to ask you guys.
If we're ice melt versus salt, like on the roads?
And the sidewalks.
And the sidewalks. You know, up in the canyons, like let's say Parley's Canyon, we'd get a little higher reading. And again, if you had Teresa Gray, you get a better answer. But we do see higher levels of total dissolved solids in Parley's Canyon than we do in other places, and because there's a major interstate freeway that's linked highly to commerce, and it's a critical link. But the rest of it, we really do try to go to a balance. So it's like if someone's excessively using it or whatever, we'll have a talk, but usually we're not seeing a lot of issues with that in the water. We don't love it, but yeah.
That's all the time we have. So another round of applause for Patrick and Jack.